Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. My name is Aya Karunika. I'm from Santi Forest Monastery in New South Wales, Australia. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land. I'm currently sitting in the land of the Gandangara people, and I would like to respect the elders past, present, and emerging. So on Vesak of 2022, I thought to talk a little bit about how to actually live the Noble Eightfold Path. Most of us are quite familiar with the factors and theoretically know all these things, but sometimes it's nice to really see how do we really apply it to our day-to-day life and really live it as a practice. And before I go into discussing the Noble Eightfold Path, I thought to inquire, how did we get a Buddha in the world in the first place? Have you thought about this before? I'm sure most of you know, and most of you may have. But it was because a young man by the name Siddhartha Gautama had a very profound insight into something quite simple, like old age, sickness, death, and of course rebirth. These are quite common things, and we never think that these things are a problem. But for young Siddhartha Gautama, when he first realized in a very profound way the inherent danger in these things, that is what made a big difference, and that is how we ended up having a Buddha. So for most of us, when we think about suffering and problems in our life, we think about the difficult person in my life, or the difficult situation that I have got myself into, or how to pay the mortgage, or the relationship problems. These are kind of the things that most people worry about and think are big sufferings in their life. However, nobody or hardly anybody think that all these things are there because I was born. This is not common to think in this way for most people, but that's true. Once born, all these things and more happen to us. And this is what suddenly dawned on young Siddhartha Gautama. He realized once being born, we cannot escape many of these things. And most importantly, like problems of old age. You know, when people are intoxicated by their youth, when they're still young and healthy, they never think about problems of old age. And even old people hardly think about old age problems because they distract themselves with their grandkids or watching TV. So, you know, people never think about these things. And when it comes to sickness and death, sure, we know that these things are there, but we have this feeling that it's not going to happen to me or to my loved ones anytime soon. Therefore, they are not my current problems. So we never really pay much attention to birth, old age, sickness, and death as serious problems or sufferings in our life. However, that was not the way that the young Siddhartha Gautama thought. He really saw the inherent danger in these things, that once born, we cannot escape old age unless, of course, you die young. And problems of sickness and death, these are quite serious matters. And he felt repelled by it. And not only that, he thought, well, it is not proper for me, if I am being subject to old age, sickness, and death, to sort of seek for things that are also subject to birth, old age, sickness, and death. And what are these things that are subject to old age, sickness, and death? They are wives, husbands, children, slaves, cattle, sheep, dog, gold and silver, all of these things, yeah. But these are the things that we continuously seek for, yet we are still not free from this big problem of being born, sickness, and old age and death. So when young Siddhartha Gautama realized this, he decided to renounce his wealth, his possessions, his family, his status, all of these things. He shaved off his head and beard and put on the robes and went into homeless life. And in search of a solution, he realized that being born was the main problem. This rebirth is the main problem. Once being born, we cannot escape these inherent things. And so he was going in search of a way out of this problem, to transcend birth, technically. So this is what he was searching for. And I will not get into his story because most of you would have heard this many times. But his main discovery of the night of his enlightenment, as we all know, was the Four Noble Truths. And that is the first noble truth, that is, there is suffering in the world. The second noble truth, that there is a cause for this suffering. Third noble truth, the cessation of this very suffering. And the fourth noble truth, that is the way leading to the end of the suffering, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. So today I would like to focus on the fourth noble truth, which is the Noble Eightfold Path. But let me first mention or read out something that the Buddha himself said in Nagara Sutta, which is in the Samyutta Nikaya. If you are interested, it's in 1265 of the Samyutta Nikaya. The Buddha describes his discovery of the Noble Eightfold Path in this way. Suppose, bhikkhus, a man wandering through a forest would see an ancient path, an ancient road traveled upon by people in the past. He would follow it and would see an ancient city, an ancient capital that had been inhabited by people in the past, with parks, groves, ponds, and ramparts, a delightful place. Then the man would inform the king or a royal minister, "Sire, now that while wandering through the forest I saw an ancient path, an ancient road traveled upon by people in the past. I followed it and saw an ancient city, an ancient capital that had been inhabited by people in the past, with parks, groves, ponds, and ramparts. A delightful place. Renovate that city, sire." Then the king or the royal minister would renovate the city, and sometime later that city would become successful and prosperous, well populated, filled with people, attained to growth and expansion. So too, bhikkhus, I saw the ancient path, the ancient road traveled by the perfectly enlightened ones of the past. And what is that ancient path, that ancient road? It is just this Noble Eightfold Path. That is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. I followed that path, and by doing so, I have directly known aging and death, its origin, its cessation, and the way leading to its cessation. So I find this description really beautiful, the way the Buddha describes his discovery, this beautiful path, and this is what he taught all of us who would also like to end all our suffering and reach enlightenment. So today I thought that instead of going through the traditional Noble Eightfold Path, use another sutta which gives the Noble Eightfold Path in a very practical way, in a way that we can actually apply to our lives. And And maybe I will read out that sutta as well, and then maybe we'll try to make an attempt to describe it. So this sutta is from the Anguttara Nikaya in the book of 8, and it is the 81, sutta number 81, called Mindfulness. In Pali, it's called Sati Sampajanya Sutta. So I will read out an extract and let's see how we go. Bhikkhus, when there is mindfulness and clear comprehension, for one possessing mindfulness and clear comprehension, the sense of moral shame and moral dread possesses their proximate cause. When there is a sense of moral shame and moral dread, for one possessing a sense of moral shame and moral dread, restraint of the sense faculties possesses its proximate cause. When there is a restraint of the sense faculties, for one who exercises restraint over the sense faculties, virtuous behavior possesses its proximate cause. When there is virtuous behavior, for one who behavior is virtuous, right concentration possesses its proximate cause. When there is right concentration, for one possessing right concentration, the knowledge and vision of things as they really are possesses its proximate cause. When there is knowledge and vision of things as they really are, for one possessing the knowledge and vision of things as they really are, disenchantment and dispassion possesses their proximate cause. When there is disenchantment and dispassion, for one possessing disenchantment and dispassion, the knowledge and vision of liberation possesses its proximate cause. Suppose there is a tree possessing branches and foliage, then its shoots grow to fullness. Also its bark, softwood and hardwood grow to fullness. So too, when there is mindfulness and clear comprehension, for one possessing mindfulness and clear comprehension, the sense of moral shame and moral dread possesses their proximate cause. And when there is a sense of moral shame and moral dread, then it goes on through the whole sequence back all the way to the knowledge and vision of liberation. And that's how the sutta ends. So you can see this sequence is also showing as an end result the liberation of the mind. So it has to be a parallel to the Noble Eightfold Path. However, you can notice that some of the factors in the Noble Eightfold Path are not here. So is that another alternative way? But the Buddha said the only path that leads to full enlightenment is the Noble Eightfold Path. Therefore, this sequence must have all the other factors embedded inside it. So let's try and see whether we can figure it out. So what is Sati Sampajanya, or what is mindfulness and clear comprehension? So mindfulness, as we know, is the general awareness and the factor of the seventh factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. But the clear comprehension, that has an aspect of wisdom, and wisdom is always related with right view. So wisdom is always based on right view. So there, right view is there at the very beginning, as it is in the Noble Eightfold Path. And also in many places in the suttas, the Buddha mentions the foundations of the whole spiritual path is right view and virtue. So in this sequence as well, it starts right at the very beginning with mindfulness and right view, here given as clear comprehension. And the next thing to remember is that how right view leads to a sense of moral shame and moral fear. What is moral shame and moral fear? So moral shame and moral fear is the fear of knowing that one's karmic consequences, like the consequences of one's actions done by body, speech, or even the way one thinks. All these things have a karmic retribution, and you take responsibility, because we know we are the owners of our karma, born of our karma, heir to our karma. born related to our karma. We have karma as our relative. So, we know that there is no escape. Once we do something skillful or unskillful, we will have to bear the consequences. So once we have this, and this is part of right view, and once we have this right view, then we will have this kind of fear and shame in doing things that are immoral. So that is how mindfulness and clear comprehension can really lead to a sense of moral shame and moral fear. And then once we have that right view, it is also very clear how we can see how it is related to a sense of sense restraint, because sense restraint is absolutely necessary in order to do the right thing and to avoid doing the wrong thing. And you can see how that is then related to being a good person, a virtuous person. Who is a virtuous person? A virtuous person is somebody who does not do anything that hurts themselves or another person or both. So that's in brief what a virtuous person is. And then you can see the relationship of these early 4 factors. How mindfulness and clear comprehension leads to a sense of moral shame and moral dread, and how that leads to sense restraint, and how one with sense restraint is naturally virtuous. Then later on I would explain in more detail how virtue leads to deep meditation and to liberation. But before we go into that, I would like to explain these early 4 factors with a real life story, a story from my life here at Santi Forest Monastery, just to see how we can apply it in a day-to-day way. So when I first arrived here about a year ago, one beautiful sunny morning, I decided to go for a walk by myself. And then another nun who was also with me here also decided to go for a walk. And halfway through the forest, somewhere along the forest, we both met. And of course, when we met, we started talking and walking. And of course, I have got carried away and my mindfulness wasn't that great. But for my great fortune, my friend, the other nun, had a little bit more mindfulness and clear comprehension, for my great relief, because and she was also walking a little ahead of me, because at one point she suddenly put her hand out to stop me walking any further, and I was wondering why. And then I just saw, just like a foot in front of us was a big black snake, which has already lifted up its head and was ready to strike. It was just like 1 or 2 feet in front of us. So I was so very glad that the other nun who was with me had really good mindfulness. But not only she had mindfulness, she was wise. She clearly remembered what to do. Because me, who has lost my mindfulness, I overcame by fear. And the only thing I thought was to run for my life because I'm very scared of that big black snake. But I was surprised when the other nun grabbed my hand quite strongly, but firmly, but there was a calm sense of sense in her whole demeanor. Because she was calm, I also calmed down, and of course I couldn't run away because she held me quite strongly. And I was wondering, what is she doing? Come on, let's run away. This is a big black snake and it's scary and it might bite us and we might die here. And those are the things that were going in my mind. But clearly the other nun was thinking differently. She was very calm and very peaceful, and then gently we both took a few steps back so that we had a bigger gap between the snake and ourselves. And after that, she looked at the snake and with the sweetest kind of voice, she said, "Oh, we are so sorry. We didn't know you were here. We were just going for a walk. But we are going to go back now. So please enjoy your beautiful day. Enjoy the last bits of sun and have a great day." And she said like this to the beautiful snake with a lot of love. And if I was that snake, I would have been very flattered, I must say. And by this time, I have fully calmed down and I was kind of enjoying all that was happening, which was quite unexpected and quite unusual to what somebody else would normally react when they are faced with a big black snake. So anyway, we said that and very calmly we walked back. And as most of you know, the snakes are deaf, and even if they heard, they wouldn't know any English. However, animals are very sensitive to how you feel. I'm sure that snake felt the love and the kindness that came out of that beautiful nun. And also the respect she gave to the snake. And care and loving kindness, really, and allowing it to be and do what it needs to do and giving it space. That was a beautiful thing to do. And once we came back, I reflected on this experience. And I realized what an amazing thing she did, because she had mindfulness, sati, and sampajanya, clear comprehension. So with her mindfulness, she was aware that there was a snake, and she was aware that it's a dangerous being. It could, take our lives. I might not even be sitting here if she didn't have enough mindfulness, But not only that, she knew what was the right thing to do, because the wrong thing to do would have been to sort of either run, because sometimes when you run, the snake also gets scared and it might run behind you and attack you, or if worse, to try to get a stone or something and try to kill it. These will be the unskillful ways. These are the bad things to do, but she remembered, she had a sense of moral shame and moral fear of harming another being. Instead, she had the right intention, right? Right intention is non-harm and non-cruelty. That came up. That is the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. So you can see right view, which was remembering the karma, remembering all the right things that we need to do. She had right view, and leading on to right intention, she had intentions of non-harm and non-cruelty towards the snake. And instead, she had a lot of respect. And, we let go of our desires, of our wants, of wanting to go on our walk that way. And we decided to walk back and allow the snake its space and full of kindness. And, by doing that, she was quite restrained with her senses. And, it was a virtuous behavior. We did what is not harmful for ourselves, not harmful for another. So by doing so, when we came back also, I had so much joy in my mind, so much, such a beautiful sense of what we did, something unusual that we did, but which was very beautiful. So, and then I also reflected and realized, well, we all have black snakes in our lives. When you go to your office or sometime in the shopping center, or even at home, sometimes somebody would do something, or you might be faced with a difficult situation, which might trigger some fear, or some sadness, or some anger, or even some strong desires. So these are like the black snakes of our lives. So when you have these kind of things in front of you, how are you going to apply the Noble Eightfold Path? This is what this little story is telling us. So if you have enough mindfulness, you will be aware, I have an opportunity now to practice, and live the Noble Eightfold Path. I'm faced with a challenging situation. How am I going to react to this? I'm going to react to this with wisdom, with right view, with right understanding. So let me see, how can I react in a good way? Because usually when you're faced with a difficult situation, a situation that triggers anger or fear or worry or even sadness, we might react in a negative way. Sometimes we try to overpower the situation, or we like to talk back or harm somebody. These are normal habitual ways of most human beings in reacting, and doing so we have, done the wrong thing. We have forgotten our moral shame and moral fear, and we have not restrained our senses, and we've really lost our virtue at that point. But if you remember with mindfulness, and if you remember right view, remember that we are the owners of our own actions, or anything that we do by body, speech, and mind, we have to bear the consequences. Then we will arouse enough wisdom, enough mindfulness to try and see how can I handle, how can I deal with this difficult situation or with this difficult person in a skillful way. And just remembering this story where when we saw the black snake, how did we react? What was our response? And our response was with kindness, with respect, with care, with non-cruelty, non-harm. These are always good ways to deal with a difficult situation. So I invite you all to think about the difficult situations, difficult people in your life, and think, how can I, if I'm faced with these things in the future, how can I react in a more skillful way, a kind way, a respectful way, a non-harming way to both parties, and you can always find a good, skillful way. And when you do that, you feel happy. You don't have any regrets and remorse, because isn't that the case any time when the wrong thing came out of our mouth or we ended up doing the wrong thing? Later on, we look back and think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have said that. And then we have regret and remorse in our mind. And when we have regret and remorse in our mind, it is very difficult to meditate. And most of you would know and would know this as an experience. Sometimes, it comes to your meditation time and you go and sit down and try to watch the breath. It is difficult, if you've done something wrong or said something wrong. When you have remorse and regret in your mind, it is really hard to meditate. It is hard to make your mind peaceful. And this is exactly what the Buddha said. And if you want to read up, you can read up the Upanishad Sutta or Nachetana Karaniya Sutta, which is on Anguttara Nikaya, book number 10. The Buddha gives a beautiful sequence, the meditation psychology there. And the Buddha says, it is for one who does not have remorse and regret that deep meditation is possible. So, and this is how it goes. So when you don't have remorse and regret in your mind, then gladness comes about naturally as a consequence of a mind that is without regret and remorse. And that's how virtue and right view actually help us. It is the right view and virtue that keeps us in check, and keeps us in check from doing bad things by body, speech, and mind, and makes us a moral person, a really virtuous person, a good person. So when we have been a good person, it is natural for gladness to come up in our mind. And the Buddha says, when you have gladness in your mind, you don't have to exert will and say, may my mind have joy. But if you just have glad mind, and if you are just able to, stay in the present moment, maybe just be with your body and do a bit of body awareness, joy comes as a natural consequence. And what is this joy? This is the joy of a mind that has been still, that has been just not running around. Because when our mind has regrets and remorse, it's not happy here. Pleasant moment is not pleasant. The present moment is unpleasant. And when it is unpleasant, that is when we try to run to the future or run to the past. And, it's so difficult to stay in the present moment. But once we have no regrets and remorse, when the mind is glad, the mind is happy to be here. And when the mind is happy to be here, when it has been still, when it has not been moving around, then it builds up energy. And it is that energy of the mind that starts to become joy, piti, and when the mind has piti, joy, the Buddha again says, you don't have to exert any will. You don't have to exert any will and say, may my body becomes tranquil. The tranquility of the body come about as a consequence of a joyous mind. And once you have tranquility of the body, then the mind becomes happy. The mind becomes peaceful. And that happiness of the mind is what we call sukha, and that is what leads to deep meditation. Sukhino chittang samadhyati. So that is how virtue or being a good person, a person without any regrets or remorse, how that helps to enter into deep meditation, into samadhi or right concentration or right stillness, as Ajahn Brahm would say. So it's quite nice to understand how the path works and what is it that we need to do and how do we need to live our lives, So it is taking care of the black snakes of our lives and any other challenging situations in our lives in a good way and knowing what to do. And in order to do that, you need that mindfulness and clear comprehension, sati and sampajanya. And when you have that, and when you have it grounded on right view, the understanding of karma, and vipaka, and also the other broader teachings of impermanence, non-self, and the nature of unsatisfactoriness, all of these things help you to take the right kind of action, the right kind of response to life. And this is how you really apply the Noble Eightfold Path into your day-to-day life, and how that creates a beautiful mind, a mind that has no regrets and no remorse, and how such a mind has gladness as a natural consequence. It's a positive mind, a mind that is uplifted, and it's only such a mind that has the ability to enter into deep meditation. And then once the mind enters into deep meditation, that's the time where the hindrances are down for the first time. And it is because of these hindrances that it is really difficult for us to see things as they truly are. Even simple things like, problems of old age, sickness, and death. Even these things, when we just reflect on them, disenchantment doesn't happen because we don't really see them. We don't really understand them. We really feel that there is somebody here, and we have our desires and all these things. Once the hindrances are there, craving is very active in our mind, and when the cravings and desires are very active, it is really hard for us to see things as they truly are. But once we become peaceful, once the hindrances are down, when the mind enters into deep stillness, that is when we can truly see things for what they are. And when we do see that, when we see the inherent suffering, the inherent unsatisfactoriness in existence, in the sensual world, and in existence and in non-existence, when we see all this, that is when disenchantment and dispassion sets in. And that is the critical factor needed for the craving to evaporate, to come to an end. So that is how the craving comes to an end, and knowledge and vision comes about, releasing you and making you fully enlightened. So it's nice to really reflect and see in a very practical way how these things happen and what is it that we need to do in a day-to-day manner. How do we look after ourselves? How do we apply the Noble Eightfold Path into our lives? And I wish this Vesak, may you all have all the conducive conditions to reach enlightenment easily and swiftly. And may you be able to apply these teachings in a very practical way, and may you progress well in your path. And I wish you all the very best.